Hi, and welcome to English-Fabule. Are you learning English? Great. Let's learn English with a very interesting story. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Let's get started.
It is 1431 in the city of Rouen, France. In the busy market square, there is a strong, heavy smell of burning oak wood. The wood for the fire has been prepared. Joan of Arc stands here. She is a very young woman, barely 19 years old. Thousands of people have come to watch. Soldiers stand in lines. Important church leaders and French commanders are also present. Joan is not crying or showing anger. Instead, she is quietly praying. We will not begin this story with old legends or myths about Joan of Arc. We will instead look at the true facts, almost like a science study. We will talk about the real physics of what happened that day. Oak wood burns very hot, reaching around 250 to 300 degrees Celsius. We will understand what this extreme heat does to a human body. We will learn how blood vessels burst, how the brain is affected, and how consciousness fades. This true physical story is important to understanding Joan's end. Joan was just a simple peasant girl from the countryside. She could not read or write any words. But this 19-year-old girl became a very powerful person. She was so influential that she was seen as the most dangerous weapon in all of Europe. How did a young, uneducated girl become such a big threat to kings, armies, and even the church? This is the central question this book will explore. After the terrible fire was finally over, a very strange thing was found among the ashes.
It was a single object that surprisingly did not burn at all. This was a mystery to everyone who saw it. We will keep what this strange object was a secret for now. You will only discover the truth about this unburned item in the very last moments of Joan's story. By the end of this account, you will have a clear understanding of Joan of Arc. The English people who captured her did not burn a holy person. They were trying to get rid of a huge political problem that had grown too big to manage. Her story is about how one young girl became an unstoppable force, and why powerful leaders had to try and burn her to stop her. 2. The Girl Who Heard Voices. France in the year 1412 was a very difficult place. The country was broken by a long, hard war. French nobles fought against each other in a civil war that lasted for many years. This made the 100 Years' War with England even worse. Villages were burned, farmers lost their crops, and many young men died on the roads. The people of France felt lost and without hope. Joan was born into this troubled time in the small village of Domremy. Her home was on a border. It was loyal to the French king, but dangerous enemies lived nearby. When Joan was about 13 years old, English and Burgundian soldiers attacked Domremy. They took the village animals, burned buildings, and left the people scared. Joan grew up seeing the effects of war every day. She heard stories from people running away from other villages.
she knew that safety was never certain. When Joan was 12 or 13, she had her first amazing experience. She was standing in her father's garden. Suddenly, a very clear and bright light appeared. Then she heard a voice. It spoke like a person talking to her across a small room, not shouting. The voice was strong and had authority, but it was also kind. Joan believed it was Saint Michael, a powerful warrior angel who protected France. The bright light filled her eyes completely. The voice started to give her important messages. What Joan truly experienced remains a big question for history. Was it a miracle from God, as many believed then? Or was there another explanation? Today, some doctors suggest Joan might have had a medical condition, like a type of epilepsy. This condition can make people hear voices or see lights regularly, even daily, without other common seizure symptoms. Joan said her voices came often and were always clear and steady. She never lost consciousness and seemed aware of her surroundings. However, other experts point out that Joan describes seeing the saints as real, full figures, sometimes with crowns. These were more than just simple sounds or lights. Doctors today cannot say for sure what caused Joan's visions across so many centuries. We only know that Joan deeply believed her experiences were real. She was not pretending, and she was not confused. These voices gave Joan special knowledge. This secret information would later greatly impress the King of France, Charles VII. You will discover exactly what this secret message was in Chapter 3. Full of strong belief, Joan left her village. She put on men's clothes to travel safely through dangerous lands. With a small group of escorts, she rode about 600 kilometers. Her path led her directly into enemy territory. The journey took about 11 days. There was always a risk of capture from English and Burgundian soldiers who were everywhere. But Joan moved forward, driven by a deep conviction that would one day lead to her tragic end. 3. The Secret Message. Joan traveled to Chinon, the castle where the Dauphin, Charles VII, lived. Her journey was long and full of danger. For about 11 days, she rode 600 kilometers through lands held by English and Burgundian soldiers. She had a small group of escorts, but danger was everywhere. Charles VII was not a powerful king at this time. Many in his court thought it was crazy for a young peasant girl to demand a meeting with him. People often made false claims of divine visions, and Charles was very cautious. After 2 days, however, he agreed to see Joan. Joan and Charles met in private. During this secret meeting, Joan spoke a sign to the king. To this day, no one knows exactly what she said. Historians believe she told him something very personal, a secret about his own thoughts or prayers that only a messenger from God could know. Some others believe it was a clever, well-observed detail. Whatever the words,
They instantly convinced Charles of her special power. He felt new confidence and belief in his mission. But Charles could not simply give Joan an army. First, she had to face the church. She traveled to Poitiers, where many highly educated churchmen and wise leaders questioned her for more than 2 weeks. They asked her many hard questions about her voices and her mission. They were very skeptical and tried to catch her in a lie or in heresy, which was a serious crime. Joan, though uneducated, answered with great wisdom. The churchmen could not prove she was a witch, but they did not openly declare her a saint either. They said there was nothing wrong with her that stopped her from helping the king. With this approval, Charles VII finally decided. He would give Joan a small army. She would lead his soldiers to fight the English in the city of Orleans, which was under siege. This was a great honor, but it also came with a very deadly condition. Sending a young girl into brutal warfare was incredibly dangerous. The king's support was not a guarantee of safety, and the battlefield itself would be a ticking clock on her life. She was stepping into a world where survival was never promised. The Girl in Iron.
The siege of Orleans was a long and hard fight. It had lasted many months when Joan arrived in April 1429. She led a small army to help the French soldiers inside the city. For this, she needed special clothes, a suit of armor. Wearing armor was not easy. It was made of heavy metal plates. Joan's armor weighed 60 to 70 pounds, like carrying a small person on your back. Joan herself was a small young woman, perhaps not very strong. The armor was made to fit her small body, but even then, it was a heavy burden. Inside the metal suit, it was hot and tight. Joan would sweat a lot. The helmet covered her head and face, making it hard to see to the sides. It also changed how sounds reached her ears, making it difficult to know where danger came from. Simple movements were hard. Moving her hands in the metal gloves or bending her legs in the plate armor was slow. Joan was not a super soldier. She was a normal girl in a very tough situation. She must have felt tired and thirsty all the time. On May 4, during an attack on an English fort called the Tourelles, Joan was in the thick of the fighting. She did not carry a sword, but her banner. Suddenly, an arrow hit her shoulder. It was a serious wound. Blood came through her armor. But Joan did not stop. She had the arrow pulled out and continued to fight. Her own voices had told her this injury would happen. This helped her believe she was safe.
This event, and others like it, made people think Joan was special. The French soldiers believed she had God's help. They felt stronger and fought harder because she was there. The English, however, thought she was a witch. They feared her, thinking she had evil powers. This belief helped the French, but it was not about real magic. It was about how people felt and thought. Could a soldier keep fighting only on hope and belief? How long before the real dangers of war caught up? The French won the battle for Orleans. The English soon left the city. It was a big victory for France. But after the battle, Joan's voices spoke to her again. They told her that her time was now shorter than she thought. 5. the king and the capture. After the great victory at Orleans, Joan led Charles to the city of Rheims. On July 17, 1429, Charles became King Charles VII. This was a very important day for France. Joan stood near him during the ceremony, holding her white banner high for everyone to see. But after the coronation, things started to change. Charles was now the king. He did not need a warrior like Joan as much as before. His advisors wanted to make peace with enemies through talking, not fighting. Joan, however, believed her voices still told her to fight and drive all the English out of France. She urged King Charles to attack Paris in September 1429.
Paris was a very strong city, and Charles was already negotiating with Burgundy for a possible peace, so he did not send his full support for the attack. The attack on Paris did not go well. Joan was wounded during the fight. An arrow hit her in the leg. The French soldiers had to retreat. Soon after this failure, on September 21, 1429, Charles decided to end Joan's army. Joan was very sad. She still tried to fight with smaller groups of soldiers, but her victories became fewer, and she faced more defeats. Her luck seemed to be running out. In May 1430, Joan went to help the city of Compiègne, which was under attack by Burgundian forces. She was with a small group of her soldiers, trying to get into the city. During a fight outside the city walls, Joan made a tactical mistake. She stayed behind her main troops for too long. Suddenly, enemy soldiers surrounded her. They pulled her from her horse, and Joan was captured by the Burgundians. She knew her mission was in great danger. She tried to escape by jumping from a tower at Beaurevoir, but was hurt and caught again. Later, she was sold to the English for a lot of money. The drawbridge of the castle where she was held went up. Joan was on the wrong side, looking into the eyes of her enemies, trapped. 6. The Great Trial. The trial of Joan began in January 1431 in the city of Rouen. It was not a fair trial of justice, but a harsh intellectual fight. Joan, a young peasant girl, faced many clever judges and church leaders. Bishop Pierre Cauchon led the trial. He was a smart man, but his goal was clear: to show Joan was a witch or a heretic. This would also make King Charles VII's rule seem wrong. Joan was kept in prison. She was alone and questioned for many weeks. The judges asked her hard questions about her voices. They tried to trick her into saying something against the church's teachings. But Joan, even without formal schooling, was very smart. Her simple, direct answers often surprised her accusers. For example, when asked if her saints hated the English, Joan gave a careful answer. She said, "They love what God loves and hate what God hates." This was a wise reply that avoided a direct accusation, turning the question into a matter of divine will. Then came a very difficult question, a famous trap. Do you know if you are in God's grace? This question had no safe answer. If she said yes, she would seem too proud, which was a sin. If she said no, it meant she was a sinner, and her mission could not be from God. Joan's brilliant response stunned the court. If I am not in God's grace, may God put me there, and if I am, may God keep me there. She did not fall into their trap. She showed great wisdom and faith. Joan faced many months of difficult questions and being held in chains. This long, tiring process slowly wore her down.
Even with her sharp mind, her body was growing weak from the harsh conditions.
The judges could not beat her with words alone or force her to admit heresy through clever questions, so they looked for another way to condemn her. They started to focus on her clothing. Joan wore men's clothes, which she had done since leaving her village. She always said she did this for safety when traveling with soldiers, and because her armor needed male clothing underneath. But the judges said this was a serious sin. Church teachings at the time, like those from Thomas Aquinas, condemned cross-dressing. For the judges, her clothing became the one weakness they could use to push for her execution. 7. The final fire. Joan was very tired and weak after months in prison. On May 24, 1431, the judges gave her a hard choice. She could sign a paper saying her voices were not from God and agree to wear women's clothes. If she did, she would live in prison. If not, she would die. She chose to sign the paper, which was called the abjuration. She put on women's clothes, hoping this would save her life. But only 4 days later, guards found Joan in men's clothes again. This was a mystery. Why did she change her mind? Was it a brave act of defiance, or was she forced? The old trial records say she told the judges that her saints, St. Catherine and St. Margaret, had spoken to her. They had told her she was wrong to go against God's will and betray her mission. She listened to her voices once more, choosing her deep faith over her own life. Because she went back to her old ways after signing the abjuration, the judges called her a relapsed heretic. This meant they could now order her to be burned to death. On May 30, 1431, Joan was taken to the market square in Rouen. Thousands of people came to watch. The air already smelled strongly of burning oak wood, even before the fire was lit. Joan, just 19 years old, was tied to a tall wooden stake. She did not cry or show anger. Instead, she prayed quietly, repeating, "Jesus, Jesus, Jesus." She spoke to a God who seemed silent in her last moments. The fire began below her. The heat slowly grew, becoming very intense. Oak wood burns at a very high temperature. Her skin would have blistered from the extreme heat. Soon, the very hot air and smoke would cause her to lose consciousness. The judges wanted to make sure nothing was left of Joan. They did not want people to take parts of her as holy objects, called relics. After her body was mostly burned, the executioners pushed the fire apart. They showed her charred remains to the crowd. This was to make sure everyone saw she was truly a woman, and that nothing important remained. A legend says her heart did not burn, but the English made sure everything was removed and scattered, so no one could find any part of her. The fire finally went out. Joan was dead. But her story was not over. Her death created many big questions. The legal fight to understand Joan's life and her mission was only just beginning. The truth remains. 25 years after Joan's death, a new legal process began. This was called the nullification trial. It started in 1452 and finished on July 7, 1456.
The church wanted to review the first trial. Its main purpose was not just to clear Joan's name. It was also to make King Charles VII's crowning look valid. If Joan was a heretic, then a king crowned by her might not be truly legitimate. Joan's family asked for this new trial, and King Charles VII supported it. The church conducted a very detailed investigation. They looked closely at the original trial records from 1431. They also interviewed 115 witnesses. They found clear evidence of unfairness and rule-breaking. Bishop Pierre Cauchon, who led the first trial, had hidden information that helped Joan. He also pressured witnesses and acted under English influence. On July 7, 1456, the church declared the first trial null and void. Joan was fully cleared of all charges. She was then declared a martyr, meaning she died for her beliefs. After this official clearing, Joan's legend grew even stronger. Her image has changed many times over the centuries. Different people and groups used her story for their own ideas. For instance, during the French Revolution, people who wanted a republic saw her as a fighter for freedom. Later, French nationalists used her as a symbol of her country's strength. In more recent times, people fighting for women's rights have seen her as a powerful woman who dared to challenge the rules of her time. The Catholic Church, which had burned her, finally made her a saint in 1920. She became the patron saint of France, as well as soldiers, women, and prisoners. Joan's life shows us a young woman with extraordinary determination and strong belief. She truly believed in the voices she heard and in her divine mission. Whether these voices were divine, a part of her mind, or something else, her conviction was deeply real to her. She proved that even a young peasant girl could challenge powerful leaders. She showed great courage to follow her own truth, even when it led to her death. Her story reminds us of the power of conviction. Joan's legend remains strong today. What part of Joan's story do you find most surprising or inspiring?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.